What's up, guys, and welcome to the Megatherium Club podcast, where three nerdy guys will talk about fascinating creatures from across time and share their love of science and nature. I'm here with my amazing friends Zach and Spencer, and my name is Sean. We are excited to get this started. This podcast is inspired by the original Megatherium Club from the 19th century. If you don't know what that is all right, because we will talk about that soon. In fact, I'm not sure if any of us had heard about them before this year. Had you guys?
No, this is you came to us a few weeks ago and said, "Hey, I just read this article on this old club that started at the Smithsonian. Have you guys heard of this?" No, I worked there and hadn't heard of this. So, it was new to me, and I'm assuming new to most people.
I had never heard of them either. You just sent us the link to their Smithsonian website, and I was like, "Wow, these guys are really cool." And this kind of represents who we are as people and as a group of friends, just looking for adventure and creatures, animals, dinosaurs, everything.
Yeah, I don't think I could say that better myself. I should say that we are in no way affiliated with the original club or the Smithsonian Institute. We're just a fefew good friends that greatly admire the original crew and wanted to share our love of all creatures with anyone that could relate. Maybe we should start by introducing who we are briefly, and then we'll get into this first pilot episode. My name is Sean Lewis. I'm an entomologist. That is someone who studies insects. I currently live in North Carolina with my beautiful wife and a handful of pets. I've always been interested in all animals and have had a passion for insects and dinosaurs specifically since I was a kid. I like to refer to paleontology as my hobby interest, and excited to be here with you guys. Spencer, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll step in. So, just like Sean, I'm also an entomologist. And that's kind of how some of us got connected. No spoilers there. But, so I currently work in higher education, working with students in many different facets and get to teach entomology at a wilderness field station. So kind of is passing along my passions to the next generation of entomologists, or, soon to be entomologists. And just like Sean, kind of was obsessed with bugs and of course paleontology when I was a kid, and that has only just I suppose got stronger with time. So I'm excited to be a part of this. Zach, I'll pass it along to you.
Yeah, I am also an entomologist, but I like to think of myself as more of an ecologist because I also work in forestry and landscape ecology, sort of. Currently living in Colorado with my girlfriend and my dog, and I work for the state, going out into the woods looking for bugs and seeing how they affect our forest ecosystems here in Colorado. But I kind of got started at a very young age with reading every zoo book I could at the library, and even before I could read, making my mom read to me every single dinosaur book I could find at the library. That's kind of how I got my start, and I first met Sean in California while we were looking for bumblebees out in the Sierra Nevadas. And then I met Spencer in grad school because we were in the same forest entomology lab, and then kind of connected everybody together, and here we are today.
Well, okay, I do want to point out we got connected through a very specific way. Zach, I'll let you highlight what that is.
You want me to talk about ARC?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
So all of us got started, or we met, Sean and Spencer met each other. We got connected through a video game that we call ARC. Stands for ARC Survival Evolved.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a video game about survival. Originally it was on an island with dinosaurs, and all of us were obsessed with dinosaurs. And then I was playing this game with Sean, and Spencer was like, "Whoa, what are you playing there? Is that ARC?" And I was like, "Whoa, you know about ARC? Like, who is this loser here? Play with us." And so that's where we got started.
Yeah. So I wanted to highlight that we may live in a different time period than some of the men we're going to talk about today, but we were doing what they were doing just digitally, I think. And I think that counts.
I'm not sure they were riding dinosaurs.
Well, they would have if they could.
If they could,
Oh, for sure.
they would.
Oh, for sure.
I definitely had at some point a taxidermy collection in one of my ARC houses.
It was great.
Yeah. So, in that, yeah. All right. Why don't we just start talking about the Megatherium Club?
Yeah.
What the heck is it, Sean?
Yeah. All right. Enough about us, but let's get to the good stuff. We wanted to highlight the original Megatherium Club and its members for this first episode, but in the future, we will be selecting a group of organisms either closely related on a phylogenetic tree, lived in the same period of deep time, have similar characteristics, or maybe have nothing in common at all. But we will talk about them and share any knowledge we uncover with each other and anyone listening along with us. Does that sound right to you guys about the future of this podcast?
Well, you've already said it, so that's it. You established. No, that's great. And what you said was vague enough to cover literally everything. So
I would also like to highlight that, as we will find out later in this episode, the Megatherium Club placed a heavy emphasis on expeditions and like what we might want to call adventure. And we also might stick to those same values that the original Megatherium Club had, and talk about our own, quote unquote, expeditions and adventures.
Oh,
True.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
True. There is fun to be had in the future here. But, okay, the Megatherium Club. It was founded in 1857 by William Stimson, and it was named after the giant ground sloths that lived in the Pliocene. If you guys don't know what a Megatherium is, that's alright. That'll probably be in a potentially next episode. These guys were obsessed. These guys were obsessed with this ancient mammal, often greeting each other with "how," which they deemed was the call that it made. I'm not sure how they did that, but this was more than just a club, in my opinion. I feel like this is what fraternities today wish they could be. This group of Washington, D.C. scientists associated with the Smithsonian Institute started hanging out and putting their heads together to describe and classify species. This club included zoologists, paleontologists, ichthyologists, and other biologists. Some of the big names that are mentioned being affiliated with this club include Henry Bryant, Spencer Fullerton Bard?
Mm-hmm.
Baird?
Bard, I believe.
Okay.
I've been calling him Baird.
I keep thinking of him as a D&D
No,
character.
it is Baird. No,
Okay.
You're right. Yep.
Okay. Edward Drinker Cope, James E. Cooper, Lawrence Humphrey Evers, Theodore Gill, Ferdinand Hayden, Robert Kennicott, Fielding Meek, John Strong Newberry, Henry Uelke, and of course the founder William Stimson. Reading about these guys, I constantly came across the word naturalist to describe them, and I always thought I knew what that word meant, but I did have to double check because I don't think a lot of people refer to themselves as that today.
Okay, can I just want to pipe in real fast. When I was in graduate school with Zach, I was our advisor referred to me as a naturalist. He says, "You're more of a naturalist than anything else, a naturalist and educator." So I don't like.
He referred to me as a redneck.
Okay, I believe that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, the fact that these guys were all considered naturalists and my advisor considers me one brings me quite joyful feelings. Nice. Yeah, but I just want to interrupt and, kind of help myself.
I appreciate that because you're probably the only person that I know that can say that.
Perfect. Yeah, there we go.
So awesome. All right, Spencer's a naturalist. A naturalist, by definition, that I looked up, is a student of natural history, often a field biologist, which makes sense why all these men were referred to that. And what I was going to lead into, I think all three of us could potentially be described as a naturalist, probably with Spencer being the most fitting. Okay, so this club of nerds, and nerds for this podcast and for everything really are a good thing. We're all nerds here, so if I use the term nerd, it is a positive term.
You're in a safe space.
this is a safe space for all nerds, not just bug nerds, dinosaur nerds, all nerds. But these guys started using each other's brains to help them sort through specimens and data they collected on expeditions around the world. But these boys were not your quiet library, nose in a book at all times nerds. No, these guys like to have fun. In fact, they were known for their rowdy nature probably just as much as their contributions to science. Once they put away their journals, out came the drinks. And according to a couple of sites that I was looking at, their drink of choice was eggnog. Homemade, I should probably add to that, since they raised these hens and the extra eggs that they had went to the nog supply. Do you guys like eggnog?
No,
I have literally never had eggnog.
It's horrible.
It tastes like Christmas.
I will say, though, in spirit of the original Megatherium Club, I am drinking some pre-mixed margarita with with a lot of extra
egg.
Tequila.
Okay.
Hurt with egg. Was
yeah, with egg. No egg, no eggs.
Yeah, no eggnog. No, eggs are okay in breakfast foods, but you should not drink egg anything. I drank a raw egg yolk once straight from the egg.
Straight from the egg.
Yeah.
I was going to say straight from the chicken, but that's better.
You just cracked an egg into the mouth.
No, this was an egg on a canoeing trip that had been kind of just outside the refrigerator, which in America, eggs should be refrigerated because they've been bleached and what is the term, pasteurized or whatever. So eggs in Europe and other places around the world don't have to be refrigerated, but American ones do. And this egg had been sitting outside of the refrigerator on a canoe trip for like 4 days, and I still ate it raw. It was horrible. Ooh. And I just drinking eggs, even though it's nothing like drinking raw eggs, just irks me. So I can't, unfortunately, drink that in the spirit of the Megatherium Club. But I am drinking wine. So
okay, but
cheers to them.
Well, being vegan, I also cannot drink eggnog. But I think there is a vegan eggnog, so maybe I'll have to find it. I know my wife knows about it, but adding rum to it has always ruined it for me. And I mean, I don't have a recipe for what these guys are drinking, but I think we can assume it was bottom shelf nog at the best. I don't know what they mixed with theirs.
Yeah,
I couldn't find the recipe.
Know.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe the Smithsonian has it, and we can go ask them about it. So,
make a request for information.
This is important.
Eggnog recipe. Okay,
so
very good.
So these guys would get a little rowdy on the nog, and what would they do? They're living in a castle, the Smithsonian Castle, and for fun, after they've had a couple glasses of nog, they put on their finest potato sack and race down the hallway. You remember that thing in elementary school that you guys had to do on field day, where everybody just hopped around and raced each other, and
in a big old potato sack?
Everybody fell on their face. There's probably like one dude, Trevor, kicking everybody's butt.
How did you know his name?
It just comes with it, I guess. But yeah, do you guys think they were fast? I'm honestly not sure.
With the amount of hiking that some of these guys did, these guys were the Usain Bolts of potato sack races. So, yeah.
By the way, I looked it up, and people still sack race, and world records are kept. And the fastest 100-meter sack race right now is 25:96. That's seconds. And was set in 2020 by Christian Roberto Lopez Rodriguez. I feel like that's some pretty low-hanging fruit if the Megatherium boys are still around. They were training under the influence.
That's
I
true.
mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm about
Okay.
to do
Well.
now. I've got a goal in my mind now.
Yep. Yep.
I did see that the third fastest time in the world right now is Mo Farah, the United Kingdom 10K runner, I think, half marathon
Yeah, Mo
runner. He's a
Farah.
distance guy. I think that if it's a 100-meter dash, why did they put a long distance guy into that event? They need to put Bolt in this and see what he can do, but that's out of my page.
I think Bolt has better things to do than a sack race.
I don't know what he does these days other than support Puma. Is he still racing?
No, no. If I was Usain Bolt right now, I'd be drinking this margarita on the Jamaican beach.
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking about
better place.
Megatherium Club.
Yeah, yeah. That's I would be recording this podcast just from Jamaica.
Yeah. I also read that if the crew were feeling up to it after their glasses of nog and sack races, they would venture outside the castle and serenade the daughters of Joseph Henry, who was the secretary of the Smithsonian, and they all lived in the castle at the same time. And I had to see if I could find a picture of one of his daughters, and I found one of the three. Her name was Mary Anna Henry. And if I were a single man in the 1800s, under the influence of a bit of nog, maybe tired from sack racing, would I have serenaded Miss Mary? Pretty good chance.
Absolutely.
I'm just gonna have to. Yeah,
okay, but we keep talking
sure.
about this Smithsonian castle. What is up with that? I need to know what this castle's all about. Is this like a real castle with a moat, a dragon, a princess, and the tallest room with the highest tower?
Yeah. Yep. I worked at the Natural History Museum in DC for a little while. It was an unpaid internship, so work is
slavery.
Well, I have some thoughts about unpaid internships, but I loved my time there, and I loved the people I worked with. I worked in the entomology department there, which is absolutely enormous. And yeah, so the castle is basically straight across the mall, and straight up is like dark brick looking like mansion castle. It doesn't look quite like the knights in armor castles. So no, it doesn't have a moat. It doesn't have a dragon. Well, it probably has a dragon.
There's definitely
like
a dragon.
154 million things within the Smithsonian Institutes. So one of those has to be a dragon. It's like the original building. It kind of serves, honestly, as like the Smithsonian Museum of the Smithsonian. So like all the history about the Smithsonian and all that sorts of fun stuff can be found in that building, rather than a lot of the stuff that you can find natural history based was moved over to the current location that it's in now. But yeah, it's still around. You can go visit for free. So
And that's in DC.
yeah, it's in DC, just right on the mall,
trip.
right straight down from the Capitol building. It's surrounded by one of the galleries of art, the Air and Space Museum, I think. And then across the way you have the National Gallery of Art, the African American Museum, the Natural History Museum, and then just the American History Museum. They're all right there. But the garden of the Smithsonian castle is just fantastic. I would go there a lot of my lunch breaks, just kind of sit there, and there's always like the same few people. We are all just kind of sit quietly and let the bees kind of fly around us. So yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you really wanted to know all about that, Zach, but that's what it is. So
That was beautiful.
you're beautiful.
Thank you, Spencer. I had not looked up what it looked like, so I'm going to have to make a visit sometime, being less than 5 hours from it. These were a group of young men that loved science and loved having fun. They had a close camaraderie and contributed countless scientific information to the Smithsonian as well as the public. We would like to discuss some of the club members and highlight their achievements. Spencer, would you like to go first with Spencer?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, Spencer Baird, or Bard, however you might say his last name. It looks like it's Baird on according to Wikipedia. This guy, when we first were talking about him, talking about this first episode of the club, we all thought that Spencer was. I'm going to refer to him as his first name because my name's also Spencer, so why not? Was kind of not in the club, but just kind of a what did we an honorable mention almost. But no, according to one website, he's actually considered the co-founder of the club alongside someone Sean will talk about. So this guy, he was a powerhouse in terms of the Smithsonian itself. In that, so I'll kind of talk a little bit about his early life, I guess not a whole lot, but he was born in 1823 in Pennsylvania. And I have to read you the first part of his intro on his wiki, just like word for word, because it's absolutely astounding. So he was an American naturalist, ornithologist, ichthyologist. For those of you who don't know, ornithology is the study of birds, ichthyology is the study of fish, and herpetologist, study of amphibians and reptiles. So he was all three of those, plus a museum curator. He was the first curator to be named at the Smithsonian Institution. Eventually served as the assistant secretary and as the secretary from 1878 until his death in 1887. So secretary means a little bit different back then in terms of the Smithsonian than a secretary that you might find today. He wasn't the person, who's answering the phones and kind of doing the daily stuff.
Getting
the secretary
the
was getting, well, that's a terrible, yes. Unfortunately, the movies have made the secretary get the coffee, the interns basically. But they do so much more than that. But the secretary of the Smithsonian specifically serves as like the CEO of the museum. And what they do, there's been, I think, 14 of them since Henry was the first one in the late 19th century. Spencer Baird was the second one. And yeah, they have a lot more power than I actually thought they do. They actually sit in on Senate meetings every once in a while. They sometimes have the floor in the Senate meetings, which is pretty cool. And they kind of control exactly how the United States government interacts with the Smithsonian Institute, because the Smithsonian Institute is funded by the federal government and serves pretty much everyone in the United States. But we have branches that kind of branch out in different countries around the world and do research all over the place. But the secretary oversees all of that, and they're the ones who kind of interact with the government side of things. Spencer was the second one, and he did that till his death, which is pretty crazy to say. But this guy, so he was a natural historian, and he collected things for the Smithsonian. So when he started, there were about 6,000 specimens in 1850, and by the time of his death, he managed to get that, not personally, which a lot, he did donate a lot of his personal collection and did a lot of collecting, but he also got the Navy, the Army to go out and to collect these things while they did expeditions and military service like throughout the North America. He had them like essentially collect plants and animals. And so he went from he grew the collection from 6,000 specimens to about 2 million specimens. Now the Smithsonian Institute houses about 154 million, but there's been some time since he passed away. So, and he published over 1,000 works during his lifetime. Yeah, absolutely crazy powerhouse of a natural historian. The fact that him and I share a name makes me pretty happy about it. There is a statue of Spencer outside of the Smithsonian Castle, which I remember seeing. And at the time, it didn't mean a whole lot to me beyond the fact that his name was Spencer and he was like, the secretary. And now I'm like, oh my God, he was so much cooler. And so I'm glad I got to kind of research this guy. Yeah, so kind of going back into it, he was born in Pennsylvania. He was a self-trained naturalist when he was younger, similar to what the three of us are, and eventually earned his master's degree at Dickinson College. Moved to New York, thought he was going to go to med school, decided that ecology and natural history, well, not ecology, but natural history were his forte. Very similar to my track there as well. And yeah, so eventually he essentially got a grant from the Smithsonian Institute to collect specimens from caves throughout southeastern Pennsylvania. And I have to say the amount of his second grant from the Smithsonian, which was $75
Wow.
to collect, pack, and transport the specimens back to them. Yeah, so he ended up working for the Smithsonian shortly after getting those grants, and he brought his own personal collection with him, which accounted for about 3 train cars worth of his own personal collection to bring back to the museum. Unbelievably large personal collection. Yeah, kind of continuing on with this guy. So, yeah, he just kind of like ran the museum after a little while.
Huh.
Yeah, the Smithsonian like wouldn't be what it is today. At some point during his tenure there, he started implementing live specimens, not just taxidermied specimens, into the castle, which eventually created the National Zoo, which now the zoo is like its own big zoo north of DC just a little bit, or on the north side of DC, I should say.
Wait. If I may for a second, what was the first thing he brought back for his as a live specimen?
It didn't say. It didn't say what it was. It just said that he started having live specimens like in the castle itself, which eventually grew and eventually would become the first zoo, like the first national zoo.
Okay, well, I think it's safe to assume it's something pretty small.
Elephants.
It could. I don't know. I can't say it was probably elephants. I would imagine it would be small things, but who knows? I mean, somebody's got to know. I could probably look it up and bring it back later. But that's a good question. Yeah, not a whole lot more I want to talk about, but I will I will end it kind of with this. So Sean alluded that these guys were not nose in books type of guys. Yes, they did. They did a lot of readings, obviously, and they kept up to date with everything. But these guys were out in the field. And in 1842, Baird hiked more than 2,100 miles looking for specimens to collect.
Where was this?
That's nothing. That's not even a full Appalachian Trail.
That's true. But this guy was also like carrying specimens. He was collecting specimens. He was looking for specimens. And that was just in 1 year alone. I looked it up. Sam and Frodo walked 1,300 miles to go from the Shire to Mount Doom. So he blew them out of the water, and it took them
It took them 3 whole books.
That took them 3 whole
like
books.
9 hours, right?
Yeah,
and that's the
like 9 hours.
That's not even like the editor's cut or whatever.
11 hours, I think, in total of the director's cut.
Special editions.
Special editions, yeah. So yeah, these guys were out in the field. I was gonna ask, do either of you know how many miles in total you've walked in 1 year? Can you beat Spencer Beard?
Oh,
Totally.
I cannot.
At my peak, I was running 80 to 90 miles a week. What is the math there?
5 times 52, so...
Yeah, let's just say...
Get that calculator out. That's the wrong app. Nope, still the wrong app.
85 times 52. 4,400.
Okay.
I beat him in a year. But
I
was running.
Yeah, you were literally running and you weren't looking for stuff.
No. Just women at that point. Which there
and
were
you
none.
found one!
Is that why you were running?
Yes,
You were just
after that.
chasing girls at your all-boys college?
We had to look somewhere. We left campus. That's why I was a runner. We had to run away from campus, and then you look. Because once you come back, it's back to the sausage fest.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah. Yeah, okay, so I'm not a runner. I like hiking. You'll find out soon enough that I'm a big canoeer. To me, Spencer Baird hiking that much in 1 year, 2,100 miles is a lot to me.
Oh, it's impressive by anyone's standards.
Yes, that is a long ways to go. Just and looking for stuff. Like you're not, you don't have a goal. You're not power hiking. You are kind of slowly walking.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
looking
That's
at the
majority
ground.
of
You're like, oh shoot, cool plant, cool bug, bird, whatever it is. Like that's an impressive dedication to naturalism.
Oh yeah, the majority of his day he was moving.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, I wish that was my job. I wonder if I maybe have beaten him at some point during my adventures, but I never bothered to calculate that out. So
Yeah, who did that for him? Who counted how many miles he walked?
I imagine that he
it was his
probably did,
Fitbit.
since he was probably alone a lot of the time. This was like before he started working for the Smithsonian. So
Do we have any evidence to verify his accounts? I think he's bluffing.
you think he's bluffing?
I think he's bluffing.
All right. Well, maybe we can hold a séance and ask him, yeah, and you can tell that to his face.
All right. What's his name? Hey, Spencer. You're a fraud and a fake.
Ooh, you're calling him out.
Call him out. The real
no,
Megatherium Club's here now.
No, this guy was great. Like I said earlier, like the Smithsonian literally wouldn't be what it is today without this guy. So yeah, he kind of built this. So I the reason I want to talk about, like, to kind of wrap up, I suppose, like, we've been wrapping this up for a while, this guy, but he was a big fan of letting the Smithsonian, or the Megatherium Club, kind of do what they wanted to do. But serving as kind of like the CEO, he kind of had the hard, tough position to be like, hey, like, let's keep it down a little bit. Yeah, and specifically his daughter, Lucy, was one of the big advocates of trying to control the boys of the club. And she was the one, I think, who got the hens. Maybe it was hens. I guess chickens might be considered the first animals at the castle. She was kind of the one that got the chickens kind of removed and placed somewhere else because she was tired of the chickens. So that would have been Spencer's daughter.
I think she was just salty that the boys were singing to Mary.
Yep.
Maybe.
She's, I want to end this fun.
That maybe, yeah. We'll let that up to her, I guess, in history. So,
Just wanted
so
a song.
that's
all she wanted.
what's that?
She just wanted a song.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, whatever she wanted. So, I can imagine that she held some power because of her father. And she was also probably powerhouse in herself as well. So, yeah. So that's Spencer Baird. I'll pass it back to you, Sean, if you want to talk about some of the other really important starter of this club.
Yes, definitely. Well, I think this is a good point to take a break.
Hey folks, this is Spencer, giving you a trigger warning regarding suicide. Please listen at your discretion. The topic comes up at the 50-minute mark. Yeah, where were we? We just got done talking about Spencer Baird. Sean, I believe you were about to pick it up.
Yes, I would like to talk about William Stimson, the other co-founder. I don't think there's as much information out there on Stimson as Baird, but I'll give a shot at it. He was born in 1832 in Boston. After high school, this man decided to enter the Cambridge Latin School, which is very important for this position. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish we had these today, or at least like a class or two about Latin, because I think it'd be super helpful for people like us, some naturalists.
I remember Latin names so much better when I actually know what they mean.
Oh yeah. Okay. Side note, just I guess talking with people can be very difficult when you're talking about common names of specifically insects. But every region of the U.S. has a different common name for that insect. But if everybody just was on the Latin train, we would not have communication issues.
Yeah, I want to give just a quick example. Ladybug versus ladybird beetle. Both are the same thing, but both can mean different things in different areas. Yeah, if we just got Latin. I will preface, like, a lot of people took Latin back in the day. Like, it was like a mandatory thing. Like, if you went into higher education, if you went into college, you took Latin, which I kind of wish was still a thing, but it is what it is. So.
Oh, absolutely. But obviously, it was very helpful for this guy. William because it helped him to describe animals, specifically marine animals, later in his life. Marine biology was William's main focus, and he spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest. Very jealous of that. His position at the Institute was the director of the Department of Invertebrates, so his main focus in marine biology were the marine invertebrates. Once William left D.C. for a position as director of the Academy of Science in Chicago in 1866, the band kind of broke up. The Megatherium Club was no more, so it started with him and it died with him, unfortunately. But this man gathered one of the most extensive history collections in the U.S. and while at his time at Chicago, and then the Great Chicago Fire happens, and almost all of his work was lost. And he died the following year from tuberculosis. I don't think
what a year.
The tuberculosis was related to the fire, but tragic 2 years in a row there for history. But rather young, 40. That's I don't know if that was great for that time period or what, but maybe all these adventures.
It was
not. Oh, okay. Still bad. All right.
The reason that, like, the common misnomer that people didn't live as long before, like, the advent of, like, modern medicine was that the average time of death was so much skewed to one side because there were so many more people being born and then immediately dying, that it was just like, oh yeah, people didn't live for very long. But it was like, if you really take out the fact that so many people died in childbirth, which is horrible in its own right, people lived pretty normal long lives.
Yeah, once they got past, like, childhood, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. So, like,
past the age where polio was going to mess them up.
Yeah, well, yeah, that too, yeah. One of these guys that I was looking at, he lived to 89 years old, which, like, is old, but, like, wasn't that uncommon for the time.
Okay.
It's like now, some people just die young. If you did get a disease, then you were kind of out of luck. If you managed to avoid that, then you're a little bit luckier, I suppose. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, but TB or consumption was a pretty nasty one, so...
Oh.
Poor guy.
Yeah. And from what I've seen from the Megatherium Club, they kind of lived by the rule of it's better to burn out than fade away.
Yeah.
So some species that William Simpson named included the California sea cucumber, the brown box crab, the furred sponge crab, the Jonah crab. Man, I feel like I just keep naming crabs. This guy really liked his crabs.
He was, you might say, crabby.
Call him Mr. Krabs.
Got him.
You know he had, like, dried specimens all over his office.
I totally thought you were going to say
for
he
sure.
had crabs.
Yeah.
Totally
this man had crabs.
Yeah, he had crabs all over the place. His walls, his kitchen table, everywhere. There's crabs everywhere.
He also named some snails, and Wikipedia claims he named 40 different creatures. I won't go into further detail on that, but they're all marine invertebrates. Species named after William to honor him include a rare Hawaiian goby fish, a sunstar fish, a couple shrimp, a fossil arthropod, fossils, mostly marine things with a species name being Stimpsoni. The Stimpson. That's probably it. Jeez, good, nice. Thanks, Zach. But someone decided, this man needs a whole genus of flowering plants. Flowering plants with Stimpsonia native to China and Japan.
What? Why China and Japan? Where does that come into the equation?
So I was like, man, that seems a bit out of place. This American marine biologist gets their name on a flower in Asia. So I kept digging, and I learned that Stimson went on this American expedition in 1853 to 1855, which also, side note, required 2 ships because the first one sank in a typhoon.
Oh boy.
But it made stops in China, Japan, Siberia, and Kamchatka, which I thought... Oh, wait. Sorry. Siberia Kamchatka are now Russia. For
Oh, I was about
yeah,
to say, where is Kamchatka?
Russia. Yeah. So I was like, oh, all right. Well, at least he went there. And then I kept reading, and another scientist went with him on this trip, whose name was Charles Wright, and Charles was a botanist. So I stopped trying to make sense of it because they had a marine biologist and a botanist on this trip, and they gave this whole genus of flowering plants to the water dude, the ocean biologist guy. So someone was just a big fan of William Stimson and wanted him to have some flowers named after him, I guess.
What a life! I want some flowers named after me.
But there's I can't find any crabs named after him, so I think he named all of them.
You named every crab out there.
There were no crabs left for Mr. Krabs. But yeah, that was some highlights about William Stimson, the good old founder of the Megatherium Club. Solid mustache, by the way, if you guys ever look him up. Kind of goals for facial hair in the future.
Yeah, I think I can easily say that every guy that I looked up, solid beard, solid mustache.
Yeah, facial hair was not in want.
It might have been a requirement for the club.
I'm pretty sure it
Probably.
was.
So I think
we might need to grow out our own facial hair.
Yeah, as much as
I have a mustache right now.
I know my
have.
girlfriend would really love that.
Perfect.
My wife is in full support of my mustache, just for full.
Oh yeah,
clarification.
I'm looking at this Megatherium Club photo, and every one of them has a wonderful mustache. Even if not a beard, they have the mustache.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't. I definitely have like the modern like close shave. My partner thinks it's rather itchy, but that's okay. She doesn't mind it beyond that. So
yeah, it's not her mustache.
Just don't touch it, I guess, if it's itchy. But thanks for bringing up that picture, Zach. So, I was reading through stuff.
Are we looking at the same picture?
There's only like one picture, so I think so. There's four guys.
Four dudes. Yeah.
Four dudes.
The guy that I'm going to talk about's in there.
Yeah. So I won't name everybody that's in this photo for anybody listening. Well, I was mostly saying that because I don't have it pulled up, so I'm not sure who's in the photo.
I can tell you. I got it pulled up.
All right. Zach,
so
you want to name these four individuals real quick?
Yeah, I'll bring this picture up a little bit later, too, because it relates to the guy I'm going to talk about. But there's four men, two of them sitting in chairs, kind of like diagonally facing each other. It's very much posed for a camera. And then there's two guys standing in the back. The two guys in front are... I can't see their names.
One of them's William Stimson.
Okay, so left to right, the guys sitting in the front are William Stimson and Henry Bryant. And then in the back, standing up, left to right, is Robert Kennicott and Henry Ulke. Four of the like co-founding, integral members of the original Megatherium Club.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to hold off on what I want to say about this because I don't want to spoil it. But it's a great photo, and if anybody's listening along and wants to look at it, I definitely recommend it. And I think I'll save my comment to see if Zach discusses it when he talks about his person.
Ooh, good call. Also, we'll include a link to the picture.
Yeah, look in the show notes.
Yeah, show notes. So.
Zach,
because we have show notes.
we will. I'll turn it over to Zach now, and let you talk.
So I am going to start out talking about the man named Robert Kennicott, one of the founding members of the original Megatherium Club. He was born in 1835 in New Orleans and suffered a tragic death at only 30 years old on an expedition in Alaska. He was termed an American naturalist by Wikipedia. And
if I can ask, what was the disaster?
That's gonna come up in my presentation,
All right.
if you will.
Can I also pipe in here and just highlight the fact that Spencer Baird was Robert Kennicott's kind of like mentor. So
Yes.
not to like brag or anything, but the guy I chose kind of was your mentor. You guys.
Well, he died young, so you might have messed up there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
oh, you called me out. All right, continue, Zach.
well, I will say Robert Kennicott he was the epitome of live fast, die young. So if you can imagine, he's the son of a horticulturist, so he kind of is exposed to nature from, the point of view of a horticulturist. But he grew up with no formal education, and he had a lot of health problems when he was growing up, including fainting spells. But he became obsessed with natural history at a very young age, and he kind of trained himself to be what we call now a naturalist. And he was so successful at being a naturalist that as a teenager, when the Smithsonian Museum itself was just 6 years old, they started getting all these samples and stuff from like this weird teenager named Robert Kennicott. Yeah, and he was such a successful, naturalist that at the age of 21, he helped establish the Chicago Academy of Science. And then a year later, he also established the Natural History Museum at Northwestern University. So, like, if you can imagine a guy with no formal education, he just goes outside and he's like, this is so cool. And he starts collecting everything he can, specimens of, he was more specifically a herpetologist. So I imagine this kid going out collecting frogs, snakes, salamanders, whatever he's finding, and just sending it to the Smithsonian Museum.
Do you think he sent them alive or dead?
I'm hoping they were dead, but it could have been part of that live, the live specimens.
Spencer Baird was like, "Heck yeah, this is the start of the National Zoo."
Yeah. Spencer Baird's like, "Yo, intern, go give me some live specimens."
I did see. I think it was at the Minnesota Natural Museum in St. Paul, Natural History Museum in St. Paul. And they had like a little exhibit of like things that had been sent to them from kids. I mean, granted, like Robert Kennicott was not a child at the time, really. But yeah, they had this whole exhibit of all like this stuff that kids had brought in for the museum to put on display, and I thought that was really cool. I don't know if they still have that exhibit, but I'm sure they do. So
that is a really cool exhibit. I would actually love to see that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of right in the start. I think it's there. I can't remember 100%, but you'll have to check it out. So
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my notes are a little bit messed up here, but so this guy is a very accomplished naturalist / herpetologist at a very young age, and he starts doing expeditions pretty much everywhere So he was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, moved to Illinois at a very young age, and I imagine that's where he's catching all these frogs and salamanders and snakes and donating them to the Smithsonian just because.
I'm just picturing this young man just sending boxes to the Smithsonian of live frogs and snakes. Just be like, watch this.
Yeah.
Like he's like, yeah, I'll contribute to science, but actually, this is funny.
Yeah, here's
he's
a
the Bart
live frog in
Simpson
a box.
of the late 1800s.
He's actually just pulling pranks this whole time, and like, this guy is great. Let's get him on board. He's like, oh, all right.
Is this all it takes to be a national scientist? I wish that was still the case.
I'll have to do that.
But from the research that I found, he was more of a naturalist. They labeled him kind of as a herpetologist, but just to the Smithsonian, he donated 151 quote unquote lots of fish to the Smithsonian. I don't know what a lot is, But he donated 151 of them to the Smithsonian, which is to me that's a lot of fish. If it was just one fish, that's 151 fish.
I do want to just pipe in and say, like, yeah, odds are he wasn't actually sending in live specimens, but he also probably wasn't sending in just things he found on the ground. He probably had to prep these because it probably took a few weeks for these specimens to get from Illinois all the way into DC. So I bet he was probably a pretty good taxidermist if that's what he was doing, like steady skins or something like that. So,
or he was just accounting for the fact that they're dying on the way, and poor old Spencer Bard is opening up boxes of dead fish that just
Okay,
reeks.
no, I was gonna say that he did spend, I think it was 2 years as, I guess, the apprentice of somebody named Jared Potter Kirtland, who basically showed him how to collect things and prepare things, and then I'm imagining that's what he sent to the Smithsonian. Are these creatures, these probably mostly herpetological animals, salamanders, frogs, lizards, herps. Yeah, he sent those to the Smithsonian, pre-prepared and everything. I doubt he's sending live animals in a box to the Smithsonian Museum.
Okay, fine, you're right.
Okay, continuing on. He was such a successful naturalist that he was actually chosen to head what was called the Western Union Telegraph Expedition to Alaska. And I don't exactly know what they were looking for in Alaska, but that's actually where he died. But he, over his entire lifetime of 30 short years, he contributed hundreds of specimens to the Smithsonian, and he was he played a very important role in creating probably their natural history museum. And he very mysteriously died on this expedition in Alaska. So he went out really early in the morning, and when he didn't come back for breakfast, which, that shows how early in the morning he was leaving, his colleagues got worried about him, and they went to go find him. And they eventually found him on the shoreline of the Yukon River, just laying on a rock, head over his eyes, and he was foaming at the mouth.
Head over his eyes.
Hat over his eyes.
Oh,
sorry.
hat. Oh.
Hat over his eyes. He's clutching his chest with his hands, and he's foaming at the mouth. And normally, what Robert Kennicott would do is when he would go out on expeditions, he would carry a bottle of strychnine with him to help him dispatch of any, small critters that he collected. And when they found him, that bottle was not on him. Uh-oh. So what they thought, and for what they have thought for the last 150 years, is that Robert Kennicott drank a lethal dose of this strychnine poison and just chucked the bottle into the river and committed suicide that way. Which has now been proven to not be the case. All of his friends at the time and his ancestors now realize that he's not that kind of guy. And granted, I know that it's not always the people that show it outwardly are the ones to commit suicide, but none of his colleagues or his friends or family really saw this as who Robert Kennicott was. And in that photo we were talking about earlier, I think it kind of displays how Robert Kennicott was the glue and maybe the instigator of all of the shenanigans that the Megatherium Club committed. And in this picture, those old-timey pictures where nobody's ever smiling. It's a really serious sort of occasion to take a picture of oneself. You can see in this picture the two men sitting in front. What were their names again? William Stimson and Henry Bryant. They're sitting in the front, stone-faced. And then as you're looking at it, your right, Henry Uki, also stone-faced. But then you see Robert Kennicott, arm around Henry Uki, staring him dead in the eye, trying to make him laugh. And I think that's like the perfect the perfect depiction of who Robert Kennicott was. Kind of, you know, like I said, the instigator of all of the shenanigans, and it seems like he had the most camaraderie of the group, and he was one of the most beloved members of the group. Where he grew up is now called The Grove, and the director of The Grove, plus, you know, Robert Kennicott's ancestors, wanted to look into how Robert Kennicott died, because they did not believe that this was a suicide. And 150 years later, they dug up Kennicott's bones, and they sampled his hair, tissues, and his bones, and they did not find, you know, doses of strychnine in his tissues, essentially. And they were able to conclude that Robert Kennicott. They also went through his childhood records and accounts, and I'm guessing doctor records, because they found out about these fainting spells that he had, and they were actually able to conclude that he had heart disease from a young age that just went. I mean, it's the 1850s. Like, there's no doctors that can tell you that you have heart disease at a young age, and they concluded that he had a heart attack on the side of the Yukon River.
Jeez.
And that's how he died. And they discovered that 150 years later.
That's crazy.
I think it is actually a beautiful irony that his bones are now on display at the Smithsonian Museum.
That's so cool. I can imagine that he would want his bones on display. Like, yeah. I want my bones on display. I don't know if this counts as a last will and testament, but hear me now, Smithsonian Institute. You can put my bones on display if you.
Yeah, you can put Spencer Stout's bones on display right next to Robert Kennicott.
Perfect. I want my arm around his, and I want to be looking at him just as how he's looking at Henry Uke, I think is how you pronounce his name. So, yeah. Very cool. That's super unfortunate that he passed away at only 30. I know that all three of us are...
30.
I am 30 at the time of this recording.
Okay, well, I'm only 29, so I'm still a young man. But
I would like to talk about the honors that have been bestowed upon the legacy of Robert Kennicott.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes. So he has 2 fish named after him. I don't know anything about these. One is a striped-tailed darter named Ithiostoma kennicottii, and the other is a whitefish named Coregonus kennicottii. There is also a glacier named after him near St. Elias National Park, and the town of Kennicott is named after him in Alaska. But I think the most heart-wrenching and touching honor that was bestowed upon him was a memoir that was written about him by his friends from the Megatherium Club in the journal of Illinois State Historical Society. And they talk about their memories of Robert Kennicott, how much he contributed to science and the Smithsonian Museum. And I would just like to give a quote from them and kind of paraphrase a story that they told about the late Kennicott. So one of his expeditions was to prove positively the existence of the, quote, poisonous serpent called the water moccasin in southern Illinois. And he offered $5 to the first living specimen which should be brought to him. And I would like to say that the key word in this quote is the first living specimen, because that was quickly awarded to some guy who brought him a water moccasin. And he paid this guy $5. And took the water moccasin. I don't even know what he did with it, but he took it as a sample, as a specimen. But another guy did not know that this reward had already been paid, And the way that this memoir talks about it is that a strapping young sucker, for which Southern Illinois men were, I guess, affectionately called suckers, he brought Kennicott a second specimen. And when Robert Kennicott explained to him that the reward was only for the first specimen, which had already been paid, the strapping sucker challenged him to a fight and threatened to flog him. So what Kennicott does is he walks over, grabs the snake behind the head so it can't bite him, and then he starts waving it around and uses the f***ing snake as a weapon to fight this guy.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
So, yeah, as you can guess, the guy immediately backs down and leaves and is never heard from again.
Yeah,
But Robert Kennicott was such a Megatherium Club member that he just grabs the snake and uses it. This is a deadly venomous snake, and he uses it as a weapon to make this guy just go away.
Jeez.
Good.
I want to use a water moccasin as a weapon.
Yeah, you live in North Carolina. Go grab one.
There are copperheads everywhere.
Ooh.
Yeah, copperheads aren't. I mean,
They're not deadly.
what do they
deadly,
kill?
are they?
Like 2 or 3 people every 10 years or something like that?
I haven't looked up the stats on that. I could be that 1 or 2 people.
It's not very much, copperheads. I mean, I would still run if somebody threatened me.
Oh my god,
yeah, I'm not
for sure.
gonna mess with it.
Oh, you're wielding snakes? Yeah, I'm out of here. Right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, very good. Okay, Zach, as you've been describing this guy, even before you got to that part, I was like, man, we should all embody the spirit of Robert Kennicott.
Yeah,
But
I
now
think Robert
we
Kennicott is
should.
the guy that we should embody.
Yeah, for sure.
We should model our own lives after Robert Kennicott.
But let's not pass away prematurely at the age of 30. So,
Yeah, I'd like to live at least another year.
at least. Oh god.
Just one.
Good.
I'll beat Robbie next June.
Well,
Okay.
Spencer, do you want to take the next
Yeah.
person?
Yeah, I could take the next person for sure. So I got 2 more people I want to talk about. I probably could just do them in tandem. I don't have a whole lot on the second guy.
Okay.
I did a little bit more on the first guy. But again, referring back to that photo, Henry Olke, I'm not quite sure how you say his name. It's
Yulki.
Ulke. That sounds more like Dutch. So this guy, he was born in 1821. He was born in Prussia. Do either of you know what Prussia is?
It's where the precious Russians live, right?
Wasn't that where the Persians were from?
Nope. It's a German state located in the northern European plain, according to Wikipedia.
What?
It was essentially
German.
part of the German Empire in the 1800s. And yeah, it kind of dissolved in the 1870s following years of revolutions and changes throughout Europe, in which Henry Olke was a part of. So this guy, he joined the what was called the German Revolution, essentially in the late 1840s, where he was injured, he was imprisoned, and he eventually was basically kicked out of Germany, or Prussia at the time, kind of this northern German area. And so he moved to the U.S., and I have to just do a quick shout out to this guy. So one of his first jobs in the United States was designing banknotes. So essentially he designed money. I tried to look up like what his designs looked like, and it doesn't really give you any like links or any descriptions of what his specifically looked like, which is kind of unfortunate. I collect old currencies and old money and coins and stuff like that. So I was like, dang, this guy's pretty cool too. But
He's cool,
the
just
more I read
like
about
me.
he's just like me. This Henry guy who's like fought in a revolution and was imprisoned, he's just like me. So no, but anyway, but him and his brothers eventually moved to Washington D.C. and they were photographers essentially of the U.S. government. So pretty much during this time in the mid 1800s, if something was photographed, it was probably by the Olkeys. And for example, I just want to highlight two major photographs that are talked about with this family. One is that Henry himself photographed Mary Lincoln after Willie Lincoln, Abraham and Mary's son, after he died. So there's a famous photo of her mourning him, and that was actually taken by Henry. And then it goes on to immediately say within his own Wikipedia that his brother took the famous photo of the room where Lincoln died. So we all know that Lincoln was assassinated in Ford's Theater, and he passed away a few days later.
Wait, back up a second. Lincoln was assassinated.
Yeah, let me tell you, dude. Rough stuff for the U.S. 1865. Yeah, poor Lincoln. Yeah, one of the few presidents that I think everybody but racist people
the South,
Confederate flags, not even just the South anymore, anywhere
it's
anywhere in the U.S. at this point. But anyway, good Americans love Lincoln, right? So yeah, but his brother took the photo of the room where Lincoln died. It's a pretty famous photo. If you haven't seen it, it's just literally a picture of the room where Lincoln died, but it's very melancholy.
It'll be linked in the show notes.
It'll be linked in the show notes. Thanks.
We got to get a hold of those.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to do this. Anyway, that's just what podcasters say, so I said it. So Henry, in addition to being a photographer, he was also very much a painter. So he studied painting throughout Europe before his time in the revolutions. And when he moved to the U.S. and eventually to D.C., he was the one kind of painting a lot of U.S. government officials. And one of his paintings still hangs in the White House of President Ulysses S. Grant as General Grant, still hangs in the White House today. But I will preface that any painting of the members of the Megatherium Club were likely due to this guy. He did two specifics. He did William Stinson and he did Robert Kennicott. So if you've seen those paintings, those were both done by this guy, Henry Ulke. Are you guessing, what the heck did this guy, besides painting the members, have to do with the Megatherium Club?
Yeah,
because so far we've talked about we've talked about naturals, right? This guy was a photographer and a painter. Well, let me tell you what. This guy was a naturalist.
Whoa!
So
man.
I'm shooketh.
In his free times, this guy was a collector, and you guys are going to be ecstatic about this. He collected beetles specifically.
Oh yeah, buddy.
So he collected beetles his whole career. Whenever he was not painting or photography, doing photography, he was collecting beetles. He eventually donated his collection not to the Smithsonian, but to the Carnegie Museum, where it still resides. A description, and I quote, is one of the largest and most perfect collections of the beetles of North America in existence. So his
awesome.
his beetle collection is considered collections from major expeditions. It's still at the Carnegie Museum. You can still go see his specific specimens that he collected, which is one as fascinating from a specimen standpoint that this guy was collecting these beetles throughout North America whenever he traveled, pinning them, bringing them back, curating them, and essentially donating them. And you can still look at them today, but it's still considered one of the largest beetle collections ever collected.
That's amazing.
I mean, I'm sure we're at the point where some of the beetles that he collected don't exist anymore. As we are all aware of, and by not very many people when I say all of us, that we're in the sixth great extinction event within Earth's history. And that is being kind of fronted by amphibians, reptiles, and insects. So I would like to go see his collection someday. But yeah, that's why he was kind of included. He was an artist and he was a curator of beetles, which I think we can all appreciate. Yeah, so that was Henry Ulke. Yeah, he passed away in 1910. This is the guy that died when he was 89 years old.
Nice.
Lived a long and prosperous life.
Almost 3 times as long as Kennicott.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But he painted Kennicott, so
Yeah.
at least you got to, exist with him at some point. So cool. I guess I'll continue real fast and just talk about Fielding Meek, a person we haven't talked about quite yet. I kept thinking of this guy when you were talking, Zach, about Robert and having just like lifelong issues in health. And so this guy was born in Madison, Indiana.
Who's from there?
I don't know. Who else is from there?
That would be me.
Yeah, so shout out to the Midwest guys. So he was born in Madison, Indiana. In his early life, he became a merchant, essentially an entrepreneur of type. And he had a few failed investments in Wisconsin and Kentucky, but those essentially went under, and his health started to go in terms of he started going deaf at an early age. But one thing he really liked doing was fossil hunting. And he eventually turned this into a career. And in 1848, so he was born in 1817, so quite later on in his life, he started working for the USGGST. I want to compare that to the USGS, which we all know as the United States Geological Survey. This was kind of the precursor to that because not every state was a state yet. So this was the United States Geological and Geographic Survey of the Territories, because before states became states, they were referred to as territories. We still have territories as part of the United States: Puerto Rico, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, and which I strongly believe that if they want statehood, they should get it. I'll die on that hill. But anyway, so yeah, this guy, he started working for essentially the USGS, and he worked throughout Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and eventually kind of turned that into a career working for the New York State Museum of Natural History, doing fossil surveys in North Dakota under James Hall. And as he continued this, he got better and better at his paleontological surveys. And after fighting, I guess, with James Hall, I don't know the context of their argument. It didn't really talk about it in his biography that I read. But anyway, he had some fights with James Hall, essentially moved to D.C., where he continued doing these research surveys for the Smithsonian, working under Hayden. And yeah, so he was just a paleontologist. That's what he liked to do. He liked to go out and he liked to search for specifically invertebrates within the fossil beds of the Midwest. And yeah, so he had his Wikipedia kind of mentioned was this his no, this would have been in his biography. One of his last works is regarded as the most important work of his life. It's a 6-volume essentially series that he wrote for the USGGST, and it contains over 600 pages of text and 45 full-page illustrations of essentially surveys of paleontological finds throughout the Midwest. Can you imagine writing 600 pages on the invertebrates found in the Midwest?
No, I cannot. I cannot imagine that.
What a career! You'd have to be really into it if you wanted that. But yeah, so that was Fielding Meek. He did a lot. He did a lot of work. Some things he did unpaid, which is pretty fascinating. Other things he did paid. He passed away, and somebody wrote a memoir to be published at the Smithsonian, in remembrance of him 20 years after he died. And essentially it was hey, we all knew this guy. We all liked this guy. I want to write a report on his life, this short biography. And that's kind of what I've read for his stuff, in addition to his wiki. But one thing I noticed is that all the people that I looked up, Henry Uelke, Fielding Meek, and Spencer Beard, all, in addition to being scientists and naturalists, were just amazing artists. And what happened to that side of science? Being able to illustrate what you're finding.
Well, I think that was an important skill for those people. Nowadays we have a camera, a very good camera in our pocket, which at that time, you didn't have that option. You had to be able to illustrate what you see.
Yes, of course, cameras make it easier to like actually photograph and get everything, and but there's something about like being like having to draw something and being forced to like look at the details and try to emulate them. I think it's just is an art form that's been lost. I mean, nowadays, if you have like an art illustrator or a scientific illustrator, like that's a specific subfield within the science. Like you aren't this and that. You're just this. Zach, you didn't take the art illustration in grad school, did you?
I did not. I would like to say that I am one of the least artistic people that you'll ever meet.
Okay.
Zero creativity.
Well, in
Zach, I think you're creative.
Oh, thank you,
Sean. You don't have to lie to the poor guy.
Sometimes
you don't have to lie
sometimes.
to our audience, okay?
Perfect. So, yeah, I don't know. I thought these guys were pretty cool. Completely different lives, but still ended up in the same place, doing the same thing, hanging out with each other, bettering science for all of the world. All right, I'll pass it on. I don't know who wants to go next.
I'll take control here.
Should we break right now?
Oh, this is probably a good time for another break.
Yeah,
let's break.
Yep, a good time to break, and we'll wrap this up pretty quick here.
We'll come back. All right, welcome back, guys. I'm going to talk about Edward Drinker Cope next, and to me, he was probably the only individual on this list that I knew before looking into the Megatherium Club more. Born in 1840, now some of you may not have heard of him before, but due to my love of dinosaurs, this is a name I've heard since I was a child. Cope was a zoologist, herpetologist, ichthyologist, comparative anatomist, and of course, a paleontologist.
As we like to say today, a naturalist.
Or a nerd, no. He published his first paper at the age of 19 and described himself, it seems like, as a child prodigy. He's like, yeah, I'm good, guys. This is it.
He's good and he knows it.
His papa wanted him to be a good old boy and be a farmer, but he had scientific dreams. And my God, did he go hard in the scientific paint, if you will. This man published over 1,400 papers in his 57 years of life. So again, not one of the longer living individuals out there, but 14.
Wait. How long did he live?
57.
Oh, that's not so bad.
It's longer than some, not as long as others. But 1,400 papers.
Jeez.
But, I mean, I'm not sure if, like, writing so many papers is, like, correlates to, like, having an early death, you know? I remember grad school being...
He published and perished.
Grad school was not, I don't think for any of us, a great time in our lives, the amount of stress to publish one thing. And this guy did it 1,400 times, but maybe he didn't have, advisors telling him what to do. But through some competitors...
If I were to rank all of the years of my life, the 2 years that I was in grad school would probably rank the lowest.
Wasn't it 3?
We don't have to go to that. We didn't have to go there.
Oh, sorry.
Below the belt. 2.5.
All of us
2.5.
took more than 2 years. So it's fine.
Wait, which one of us has the thesis?
All right. So continuing on, it is unpublished. Though some competitors of Cope would argue over the validity of his work, numbers doesn't necessarily mean they were good papers. That didn't really stop him from naming over 1,000 vertebrate species that range from fishes to dinosaurs. And yes, for people listening, fishes is a word. It is used to describe multiple species of fish. Am I right, guys?
You're right, yeah.
Right.
Fish refers to the plural of the same species versus fishes. You have, bass and pike and
How many species
and...
of fish can you name, Spencer?
I can name
Fishes,
a
I
few.
should say.
Yeah, thank you. Not a whole. Well, I don't know. I've never thought about it. So I'll get back to you on that one.
I won't go into great detail on this man's impressive history, but we would probably need a few episodes to discuss that because this guy's got some huge what do I want to say?
Cojones.
What'd you say?
Cojones.
Yeah. So he was involved in the Bone Wars, and it was a huge rivalry, I'd say, between Cope and a man named Charles Marsh, and it was also known as the Great Dinosaur Rush. During this time, fossil hunting was huge, and it was just a race to see how many dinosaurs and how many fossils you could collect and describe. And these two were basically at each other's throats. They were constantly trying to outdo each other. Multiple expeditions to the American West. At one point, Marsh bribed people to give fossils to him instead of Cope. Cope reconstructed an Elasmosaurus, which for our viewers or listeners is a type of plesiosaur. Think the Loch Ness monster. But poor Cope put the head on the end of the tail instead of the end of the neck vertebra, which in his defense, it probably looked like it should go there. You know, the neck of these things is five times longer than the tail. And
yeah, as an early paleontologist, I could easily see that mistake happening.
Yeah, it's most animals today have longer tails than they do necks, with the exception of giraffes. Can anybody think of something else?
Yeah, I can't think of. I think that's like the exclusive exception, and as far as I can think of.
Okay, but Marsh was quick to be like, "Dude, you're wrong," and it led to an argument where they brought in an outsider, and the whose name was Osborne, I believe, Henry Osborne, and he was like, "No, I'm pretty sure it's on the wrong end there, Cope," and he would then go on to publish a paper just describing how Cope was wrong in his description of this. So there's one of Cope's papers that got published that was already proven wrong.
Claws out. Damn.
So 1400. Let's take that down to 1399 papers. But between Cope and Marsh, they discovered over 130 species between them and provided countless contributions to science. And again, we could have an entire episode over the Bone Wars. Maybe we will in the future. Who's to say?
Easily could.
I think there needs to be a movie over this. If there isn't already, I'm not too sure. I don't know all the movies out there. There is a book. It's written by Michael Crichton. It's called Dragon Teeth, and I think it was like a book he started before he passed away, and then his publishing company, family, whoever, kind of wrapped things up and then published it, because it definitely came out after he passed away. It's a great book, though. Recommend it. It's fictional, but it follows a character kind of like stuck in the middle of the Bone Wars.
It's a great book.
You've read it?
I read half of it.
Yeah, I honestly wasn't going to say it, but I think I'm in the same boat here. It's a great half book that I've read.
The first half of that book is great. I can't talk about the second half, but the first half, chef's kiss.
And
I haven't read any of it, so I'm not even half as cool as you guys. But I did look it up. There is no movie about it, but there is a drunk history on it.
Ooh, I should listen to that.
Is basically what we're doing now.
But you know who I think would be a great Edward Cope in a movie, based on his pictures that I find on the internet? Robert Downey Jr.
Ooh,
do you see it? I don't know if you guys have seen pictures of.
I don't have a picture of Edward Cope pulled up in front of me, but yeah, let's go with that.
No, I got one, and yeah, I could see it. Yep, for sure.
Edward Cope.
I,
Yeah, I can see it. I can see
No.
it.
right?
Now, who's gonna play Marsh?
I could not come up with that. I'm bad with actors' names, but
John Goodman.
yeah,
I feel like they're from two different generations, but they could square off in the Bone Wars.
all right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's to be decided. But
My knowledge of pop culture is not up to snuff for this conversation.
no, we'll stick to the science. So as I said, he was one of the younger side. I mean, he died around his midlife, but he started suffering from what he said was cytisis, which is a urinary tract infection.
Syphilis.
Yeah, that's close, but
Close.
so he was often like bedridden, and I'm not.
Couldn't pee.
I don't. I mean, to be honest, never been in those shoes before. Can't judge.
You never had syphilis before?
I've never had syphilis. I've never had a urinary tract infection. But he would prescribe himself large amounts of, per Wikipedia, morphine,
Oof.
belladonna, and formalin, which is,
Wow.
close to formaldehyde, and it's what they often use to preserve specimens. So, maybe not the best thing.
So he was probably looking at like the stuff that these other guys were like wet preserving their specimens, and was like, you know what? I can't pee that well. If I drink that, maybe I'll feel better.
He's like, these specimens have been looking good for a long time. Maybe I need to look good for a long time, and then took it. But unfortunately, I don't think it helped his case. And when
No way.
Henry Osborne visited him on April 5th, which, side note, he died on April 12th, which is my birthday, so, maybe, we're connected with that.
Oh.
You know. But, so he visited him a week before he died. And, he was concerned about his health, concerned about what he's been prescribing himself. Like, trying to, give him that hard love. Bro, you're probably not doing yourself any favors here. And Cope is such a paleontologist, such a scientist, that he was very into pressing Osborne about his views on the origin of mammals instead. He didn't care that his friend was, worried about his health. He wanted to know what his opinions were on evolution.
Classic.
It was even still giving lectures from his bedside before passing away. But
What a man.
yeah, he was not. He didn't die giving up what he loved, I guess. He continued with it until he died. But a few notable dinosaurs named by Cope during this whole Bone Wars fiasco include the Camarasaurus, the Amphicelios, and Celiophysis. I know that one. That one's easy. Not sure what the Amphicelius is.
Google it. Hint, hint.
What'd you say?
I said Google it.
Yeah. Amphicolius.
Amphicolius. I think it's like a Tiktaalik type looking deal, isn't it?
Oh, it's a sauropod.
Oh,
Yep.
Never mind.
It's not.
Not even close.
Seems to be rather large, as a lot of sauropods. So yeah, a guy that loves paleontology, had a gift from an early age, and a great mustache, again. A lot of drama, and produced a lot of papers, but we could probably agree, maybe not all of them were the best. Quality over quantity was not his.
Hey, like he went for the shotgun method of research. I appreciate that.
I mean, you shoot 1,400, you're going to produce,
Some of them are gonna land.
Something will land, yeah.
more than I have, so I can't speak. On that.
That's way more than I have.
But yeah, I could probably research this guy for a long time and be fascinated by more stuff. But
well, maybe that will be the theme of one of our episodes. Will be dinosaurs described by this guy,
Or just the Bone Wars.
I feel like this guy in Marsh just talk about the Bone Wars. Oh yeah, I could see it.
That would be fun.
Cool.
All right, Zach, you still have one person, two people?
I got a couple of people I can talk about.
All right.
I might talk about them pretty quickly because especially the first one named Henry Bryant, I really couldn't find a ton about, especially relating to the Megatherium Club. The most I found about him as being a part of the Megatherium Club, which we should note, he is one of the 4 people in that founding members photograph that we've been talking about. And I still could not find much about him in relation to the Megatherium Club. The most that I found was like, after the Civil War, around the time when he became associated with the Megatherium Club. And that was it. That was all I found.
Okay. Looks like a trip to the Smithsonian is in our future.
Can I stop you there for a second there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. One, yes. If you guys want to come out to North Carolina and then drive 5 hours with me, love to go to the Smithsonian with you guys. Other side notes, if we haven't made it obvious by now, the time period that these guys are going on expeditions, chasing each other down the hallway in potato sacks, it is a civil war. So
we have the Civil War in the backdrop for all of this.
The whole country is unrest. There's North versus South. There's slavery going on. In parts of the country. This is the time period that we're talking about here. While these dudes are just adventuring, gathering science, and doing what they do best. And I mean, I can't imagine how maybe on the side stressful this could be. Stressful time period for the nation, but for these guys, and I think it's just important to know the setting of when these guys.
I would also like to know that the 2 guys that I'm about to talk about actually served in the Civil War for the Union side.
Nice.
And both as surgeons, weirdly enough.
Oh.
Yeah, they were both surgeons, serving for the Union. Which is kind of crazy, actually.
I was just thinking, I was like, man, nobody we've talked about so far has served in the Civil War. We had, Henry Uelke, who was in the German Revolution, but that was it. Fascinating. Continue.
Yeah. Okay. So, Henry Bryant. He was born in May 1820 in Boston, and he actually died at the age of 47 in Puerto Rico, of all places.
Ooh.
As also sort of as part of an expedition. Whether or not it was for the Megatherium Club is unknown to me at this point, but I like to think it was. I like to think it was part of the Megatherium Club.
He died for the cause.
He died for the cause, for exploration and the advancement of science and naturalism. But Henry Bryant actually didn't really start out in the naturalist side of things, or even nature really. He actually got a degree in medicine from the Harvard Medical School in 1840. So this guy is smart. And then after he got his degree, he traveled to France to study at a hospital there. And then his own personal health started deteriorating. So what did Henry Bryant do? He joins the French army and becomes a surgeon in Algeria, as any of us would do.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So he serves in the French army as a surgeon, and then after that, I guess his health comes back. He's good to go. He is a stallion. So he comes back to America and becomes a surgeon again in Boston, and then his health starts deteriorating again. So, what does he do? He enlists in the 20th Regiment of the Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry in the Civil War, and he's pretty experienced and a well-renowned surgeon, so he quickly becomes promoted to the brigade surgeon. And honestly, there's not a whole lot of information other than this about him, but as I've been talking about, he is a well-renowned surgeon in intense battlefield situations. But that doesn't really relate to, naturalism or the Megatherium Club. But Henry Bryant is holding a secret this whole time. He is secretly obsessed with ornithology. And after the Civil War ends, he travels back to France and he buys, I'm going to butcher this name, but he buys Frederic de la Fresnay's collection of birds. I have no idea how to say that name, honestly.
You crushed it. It was great.
Yeah. I'm sorry to anybody who speaks French. But he buys this collection of birds that includes between 8,000 and 9,000 specimens of European birds. And he brings it back to America and donates it to the Boston Natural History Society. And the unboxing and remounting of this collection alone took an entire year for him
That's
to
it?
do.
That's it?
That's all. It just took him, just to unpack took him a whole year.
Hey, as someone that has moved multiple times, I understand. I still have boxes.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that. But yeah, other than, just buying this big ass collection from France, he does his own ornithological collecting everywhere from Ontario and Labrador up in Canada down to Cuba, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico. And he was one of the first American ornithologists to actually collect in the Bahamas. Unfortunately, he died in 1867 due to a brief illness in Puerto Rico. And as far as I can tell, he has 10 bird species named after him, of which I will not go into detail because I don't know any of them. They just kind of look like little songbirds to me. I'm not an ornithologist. I apologize.
Out
to
there,
all of the bird nerds out there.
There's someone offended right now, but that's all right.
Oh yeah, bird nerds go hard.
That's true. Yeah, there's no doubting that.
So hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is Henry Bryant. And if you'll allow me to talk about my last person, or I can wait.
No, I think go for it.
Okay, I'll talk about my last person, Ferdinand Hayden. This was the longest living member of the Megatherium Club that I researched. He lived to the ripe old age of 58.
Okay, all right. So I want to go not rescind what I said earlier, the fact that people live to ripe old ages. This Megatherium Club seemed to have died just young. I think
live fast, die young.
One person lived above 60 and he lived almost to 90. So he's the outlier of this group. But I will stand people did tend. Yes, people died young. Obviously, everybody we've talked about almost has died young. But people did live to old age. People weren't dying just always in their 20s and 30s, even though poor Robert Kennicott did. But anyway, yeah, okay, ripe old age of whatever. 60.
58.
58, perfect, yeah.
Here we go, Ferdy. If only I could sing Ferdelicious. Ferdinand Hayden, born in 1829, died in 1887. Not gonna lie, there is a lot more out there than I had time to research on Ferdinand Hayden. But he was a geologist, which is kind of a departure from the rest of the people that we've been talking about who mostly dealt in biology, organisms and stuff. He did a little paleontology, but he was mostly known as a geologist. and was most noted for his pioneering surveys and expeditions of the Rocky Mountains, where I currently live right now. So it's kind of cool to think about this man going all the way from the Front Range down to Santa Fe, New Mexico, just surveying all of the geology of the Rocky Mountains. But before he got into geology, he was also in medicine, and he got his medical degree at Oberlin College, where he, weirdly enough, also served as a surgeon in the Civil War. But that's a different topic for a different time. But somehow in medical school, he got the attention of the state geologist, James Hall, and he was invited to explore the Nebraska territory to study geology and collect fossils. But according to his Wikipedia page, his quote-unquote independent nature led him to end his commission with James Hall, and with the encouragement of another member of the Megatherium Club, Spencer Baird,
Ooh.
and a little money from the Smithsonian. He
$75.
What?
I was just joking. Continue.
Anyways, Spencer Baird and the dollar signs from the Smithsonian convinced him to spend the 1850s exploring and collecting along the Missouri River. And then after that, he led expeditions, after the Civil War, I should say, he led expeditions, like I said, from the Front Range down to Denver, down to Santa Fe, New Mexico, just walking around, exploring, and studying the geology of the Rocky Mountains. And then, from what I could find, one of his longest-lasting legacies was his work in the Yellowstone region of Wyoming, where he published and he led the first federally funded geological survey of the area and wrote the preliminary report of the United States Geological Survey of Montana and portions of adjacent territories, being a fifth annual report of progress. This publication, while the name is extremely boring and lengthy and hard to say, this publication was actually instrumental in convincing Congress to establish Yellowstone as the nation's and probably the world's first national park.
Huh.
Yeah, you hear quite often that America's two gifts to the world were national parks and jazz music.
What was the second thing?
I hear that all the time.
So, yeah.
Jazz.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, jazz music and national parks. Which, honestly, like, if America were to give the world anything, I'm glad it's those two. There are so many worse things that
Nuclear
the world has
warfare.
been given. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So I'll take jazz and national
world.
So,
National
in
parks.
fact, I tend to like to listen to jazz in national parks. So I'm really kind of hitting
so
that
American.
That's pretty nerdy.
I'm so the most American thing one can do is go to a national park and listen to jazz music. Yeah. Very good.
I think we need a sticker that says that.
Okay, yeah. Well, my brother owns a sticker company, so easy. Easy. Like, I could literally text him tomorrow, and we'll have stickers, so.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah. That'll be posted in the merch store pretty soon. Anyways, back to Ferdy Hayden. His geological expertise actually helped him uncover numerous fossils that are actually still housed in the Smithsonian Museum. I don't know which fossils they are, but the paleontologist Joseph Leidy actually obtained most of his fossil specimens through the explorations of Ferdinand Hayden, not through himself.
Sweet.
And then other things that are named after Ferdinand Hayden are Hayden Valley in Yellowstone. But that's actually become a little contentious recently because Native American leaders have called for it to be renamed. Something about Ferdinand Hayden calling for extermination of tribal people that disagree with the U.S. government. Yada,
That'll
yada,
do it.
yada. Yeah,
That'll
That'll
okay
do
with
it.
that. Yep.
I'm not gonna say he was like
Easy
the best
decision.
person in the world. I'm just saying he was good at geology.
Okay, yeah, we can appreciate his geological contributions, not his racist contributions.
Yeah. There we go.
Gross. Yeah, easy change. So there we go.
Yeah. There's also a town in Colorado named after him, Hayden, Colorado. He's also got a sedge, land snail, and then his good friend Robert Kennicott actually named a subspecies of garter snake after him. Thamnophis radix hidenii.
Aw.
Yeah.
I need a friend to name something after me.
Good luck with that. I ain't naming shit after you. Or they'll just think it's like something else. Somebody else.
So if you know a taxonomist, like all you have to do is ask. Just be like, hey, name something after me. Yeah, of like all the taxonomists I've ever known and worked with, they're like and we work in entomology, right? So insects, small, inconspicuous, easy to find new species comparatively to mammals or whatever. And I've known like they've like run out of people to like name specimens after. And it's like, okay, well, choose me. But maybe it's about time that we discover a new species. I'd rather discover like a new species of dinosaur, and then definitely name that. I would name one after you, Sean, and then I'd have to name one after Zach. In that order.
See, I'm first.
Sorry, Zach. It's nothing against you, even though I've known you longer. It's just that Sean seems to deserve the dinosaur norm. But if I find an insect first, I'll name that after you, Zach.
Yeah, you better.
Especially if it's a wood-boring beetle.
A wood-boring beetle.
Yeah,
which I
I
didn't mention this earlier, but Henry Uelke does have a buprestid, which is the wood-boring beetles, named after him. Maybe eventually Zach will have one that I discovered.
Nice.
Yeah.
Doubtful.
Doubtful.
But maybe.
Well, should we wrap it up here? I think this was a good episode, and I think this is a great start to a fun podcast discussing scientific finds throughout history, organisms that maybe some people haven't heard of. Maybe we'll enlighten people with animals from 65 million years plus to, just outside their door that they may never have heard of.
That's the goal.
And the reason we did episode number 1, kind of highlighting the club and its some of its members, is like we do owe a lot to these guys in the fact that we hadn't really heard a lot of these guys before this, but this is just a fun way for us to express our love for the natural world in a way that is a little bit more modern. And I think if these guys could have formed a podcast, they definitely would have. There's no doubt about it. They would have been drinking their eggnog. They would have been in between races of potato sack races or whatever, and they would have been recording these podcasts. We definitely got to thank them and their contributions to science. Moving forward to like our own inspirations in science. So
I like to think of this episode as a tribute to show how grateful we are to the path that these men paved for us. They kind of, from what I've read, they definitely ran instead of walked so that we could run, but we're hitting the ground running because of these men.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But a bit of homage. Hummus? No.
Hummus.
I need some carrots with my homage.
to the good old guys that started it all. And, I mean, if I had to pick a time period throughout history, before knowing about this club, I don't think I'd choose the American Civil War time period. But if I hung out with these guys, I'd go back.
Yeah, I would have probably slapped them if they were racist on the face, and been like, "No, now go back out and
Stop
look
it."
at rocks again."
Yeah, it also
So,
kind of sounds
but-
like you needed pre-existing health conditions to be a part of the Megatherium Club,
Right?
and not
Yeah.
be fighting in the Civil War.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, yeah. All right, I think we should end it with Robert Kennicott's quote that we pulled out of the Smithsonian article on this club.
Yep.
In that Robert Kennicott speaks of the club out of fondness. Do you want to say it, Sean, since you were the one that brought us together for this?
Yes. 1 second. I'll just have to pull it up here.
I didn't mean to put you on the
Yep,
spot
sorry
there.
about that. Yeah, how about you take it? Take the lead here.
All right. I'll take it. Okay. It is 5:00 when the Megatherium takes its prey, that the most interesting characters of the animal are seen. Then it roars with delight and makes up for the hard work of the day by much fun and conduction. That's a quote from Robert Kennicott talking about the club, probably in his last few years of life. I think that kind of encompasses what we're trying to do. You know, we're all scientists, but we all do this out of fun, right? And why not, drink a glass of wine or a like heavily tequilaed margarita, and just talk about what makes the history of all this interesting and what makes our lives kind of worth living, like studying the natural world around us. So thanks to these guys for kind of getting that started, and we'll kind of pick it up. Cool.
Definitely. I don't think I could have said that any better, Spencer. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thanks. I don't know if it was very coherent, but I appreciate that anyway. So thanks for listening to number 1. How?
How? Thanks for tuning in.
See you next week.
Oh, God, Zach, we're not doing next week.